Welcome to Business Beyond the Game. I'm Eric Jackson and joined by Super Bowl champion turned fashion exec and businessman, the former New York Giants star Carl Banks. How are you?
I'm doing great, Eric. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Thanks for joining. And, I think many people, Carl, who are tuning in and listening right now have seen the highlight film, right, and everything you've accomplished on the field. But I don't think a lot of people know that you're pretty heavy into the fashion and apparel space with your own licensing company, G3 Sports, deals with NHL, NFL, MLB. As an early black athlete entrepreneur, Carl, what advice do you just give to younger players, who are looking to make the transition after their
So I
career?
think the operative uh, category here is young players, right? So the advice I give guys, and I was just talking to a couple of Buffalo Bills players this week, and I said, listen, take advantage of the Rolodex. The NFL has the world's largest Rolodex. There's not a sector of industry that doesn't intersect with any ambition you could have that's legal. So you just have to ask the questions. So I would say, stay proactive, stay opportunistic, and ask a lot of questions. It's like when you get your playbook for the first time and you don't understand something, the first thing you do is raise your hand and you either ask your position coach or you ask your defensive coordinator. That's what you got to do when you're starting to really pursue your ambitions.
I know, absolutely. And do you think that's hard though as a young player? You know how it is, Carl, trying to make the team and your head spinning. Do you think there's difficulty there though, being long term thoughtful? You think?
No, I think it's not as difficult as probably it was when I came into the NFL. I think players are always looking beyond the game. The money is there, and they're always looking for opportunities to grow that because they have some excellent examples, especially those that are of high notoriety on the NFL. I mean, on the NBA side, like a LeBron James or Steph Curry, or even a Kevin Durant, and those are just the ones we know. But see, my role model at the time, I really wanted to pursue uh, a life as an entrepreneur was Bob Johnson of BET, J. Bruce Llewellyn. These were kings of business. And then Magic Johnson was kind of the guy who was my GPS for that. He was a guy who, he recruited me to go to Michigan State University when Michigan State was a really bad school, really bad football team. But he told me it would be the greatest experience of my life. And it was. And, he's kind of been the living GPS for me, and then another contemporary is a guy like Michael Jordan, right? These are all contemporaries, but Magic I know because he's a friend. He's
Right.
a personal friend. I've known him since I was in high school, so he's kind of been that blueprint. So I can sit from a distance and really watch what he's doing and how he's moving and listen. And if ever I needed advice, he's always been there for me. So that's kind of where I've been. And then by example, I try to be that for other young athletes right now.
Right, and Magic Johnson obviously still making headlines. Just was in the Commanders deal that just went
Yeah.
for 6 billion. So obviously still making waves in the business space. And you know, Carl, I'm curious your thoughts. Just being someone who's heavy into fashion in the business and the industry. What's it like to see guys now rocking these latest and greatest outfits coming to the games, and you see them in the post game conference? Because I feel like guys like you kind of paved that way, especially in the NFL way.
Yes. Yes and no. I'm going to tell you this. When those guys get a little older, they're going to look back on some of those pictures and they're going to say, okay, where was I? Where was my mind at? I have pictures right now of me going to a Mike Tyson fight in like a fur T-shirt and and I was like, what was I thinking there? But it was you couldn't tell me anything
Well,
at the
that
time.
was the vibe at the time, though, right?
It was totally the vibe. And but what we're seeing now from these guys, um, I think it's great. I think it's an opportunity for the world to see them. And I'll tell you who I'm the biggest fan of in terms of their fashion walk is Russell Westbrook. I'm going to tell you why. If you guys are ever in LA, stop by his store. Like, there are clothes, and then there are well-made clothes. And Russell Westbrook's boutique is you see some of the best made clothes going. So it's like when you see him walking, it's not like ragtag. You're looking like, is that good? Is it a good label? It's his brand. And I resonate with that because everything that I built at the beginning had to have a certain taste level to it. So I get where he's coming from, but I'm a big fan because I know he's rocking quality product.
Right. No, definitely. Guys have used this as a new runway of sorts for their own lines, and
Yeah, I think it's great.
absolutely. And for Carl, you were one of the first ambassadors of the starter jacket back in the day.
Uh-huh.
Fast forward to about 10 years ago, you revived the brand, buying the rights, relaunching it under your own brand, G3 Sports. What's it like, just that full circle moment, right? To be going as, to be modeling of sorts to now owning it and, creating.
Yeah, so the one thing that I loved about the starter brand as a athlete is that it resonated across cultures, right? The fan in the stand to the hip hop artist to the mob boss. They all had starter
Right. I
jackets,
still wear
right?
starter. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, you should be. You should be. But the cachet of the brand, the way it resonates, is because it revolutionized how people consume sports in fashion. And it kind of intersected, and then it became could become a wearable experience, right? Not just for the hardcore fan, but for the cool fan too. And that's evidenced by the amount of album covers, magazine covers that you saw artists of all walks, of all genres, rocking starter jackets on their album covers or on tour. And to this day, that emotional connection still exists. And the thing that made me feel that it was the right time and the right opportunity to get the brand is we were doing these. I was sitting with my designer and I wanted to do some iconic jackets for movies, right?
Right.
And I'm like, oh, wait. Arsenio Hall Jet starter jacket coming to America, Beverly Hills Cop varsity jacket. And so I said, let me call the NFL and find out if I could bring these jackets back, but I wanted to bring them back as starter. And at that time, starter was long gone from the NFL. I remember to this day, the licensing director at that time, his name was Leo Kane. He said, if you could bring those back, we would love to have them back in sport because they meant so much, right? So he gave me the contact person at Iconics brand who owned the IP. And I explained to them what I wanted to do. They're like, let's make a deal. And then they're like, I have to warn you, the brand is in Walmart right now. I'm like, I'm good. I'm like, is it in Walmart in sports or is it just in Walmart?
Right.
They're like, no, it's just in Walmart. There's no sports branding whatsoever. I'm like, cool, I got this. Because I personally have a vault of about I would say the first 8 years of starter. I have so much apparel, and I have a library, and if I don't, I'm still collecting from eBay from all around the world, right? Like just classic starter jackets because they were starter in the apparel was classic. So when that happened, when the NFL gave me that permission, and then I did the deal with Iconics, I went to the NBA. I got the exact same reaction.
Wow.
I went to the NFL. I mean the NHL, same reaction. Major League Baseball, because that brand revolutionized how we saw sports.
Right.
And the only other consumer product outside of Gatorade that's able to do that to this day is Nike. Think about that. The only apparel company to ever do it, and I'm not even bragging, but I felt this. It was starter then, it's starter now. Like when you see, just go back and look, starter has been a part of every major championship in American sport.
Right.
Olympics, the Jackie Joyner Kersey moment, everything. The Bulls in their run, the Pistons in their run, it's been there. So, like when you think about the brand and your favorite player, he wore that brand. If you think about like, there's a story that the late George Steinbrenner's daughter tells of when they were on their run in the '90s. He made Mitchell Modell, the owner of Modell Sporting Good, keep a warehouse full of starter jackets. The league had moved on from starter. He would only let the Yankees wear starter jackets. Like when the
Right.
rest of the league, I think, was doing Adidas or something like that, he's like, we're wearing starter jackets. So that's how significant the brand is, right, to sports culture, but also the intersection of pop culture. And we see that every year for the last 10 years that this brand continues to resonate with young people and nostalgic fans. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell the story of what really pushed me over the edge is that this was the thing to do. Is right in the middle of me having negotiations with Iconics. I'm in my car, and my youngest son at the time, he might have been like 15. He has no idea that I am in the middle of these conversations. I'm driving, he reaches over the back seat as I'm driving, and he holds me a Charlotte Hornet jacket. He's like, "Dad, do you know where I can get one of these?" And then he's like, can you make these? Can you make these? I'm like, "What do you know about starter?" He's like, "Yo, this is what's up," like that. And I was like, that's the confirmation I needed.
Right. He had
Like,
no idea, huh?
he
He had no
had no
idea.
idea, but that was resonating with somebody that was like 16 at the time,
Yeah.
right? So I felt that this is what was needed, and we went forward with it, and we haven't looked back.
Yeah, I know that intersection of sports and culture, right? It's so powerful. And for you, Carl, when you just think of like, look back on your career, your business career, what's the biggest business lesson you would say you've learned?
Wow. Um, Jeez. I've had. Oh, I'll tell you one. I did a deal with BET. This was probably a hard lesson to learn because I had just partnered with G3 Apparel, and I was building these leather jackets for one of the divisions of BET, and and they were one of a kind. And for some reason, they decided not to take the jackets. And the CEO of G3 is like, "Well, ship them to your garage because they're not going in my warehouse," and figure out how to get them to take it. But that was like the accountability that you learn in being a champion in sports. That lesson still applies when when you're creating something, and the commitment that it takes, and you have to have the courage of your convictions sometimes, and sometimes you're going to take a L, right? But it didn't
Right.
discourage me. I've made bad deals before with people who were using me to try to get somewhere else, right? Or to take my NFL rights. They wanted to be a partner and then kind of walk me out. And that's one of the things I always tell kids, athletes, like, don't let them use your name and then push you out, right?
Right.
If you want to be in the business, you've got to personally invest in that, right? You cannot be an absentee person with your name on something. If your name's on it, you got to be present. and people have to know that you're a part of it, or else you're going to either be walked out of your business. And I learned that lesson. The great designer Willie Smith, right?
Right.
His sister Tuki told me when I first got into business, she's like, own your name and make sure you're present, because if not, they're going to steal your name, and you'll see your product somewhere in a store and you won't have anything to do with it, and you cannot participate in it. So those are lessons that people were teaching me, and luckily I didn't fall hard, right?
Yeah.
Um, I spent a lot of money developing my concept, but that's an investment in myself.
Right.
And then I just made, I listened a lot. I met a lot of people. I asked a lot of questions. Remember, the NFL has the world's largest Rolodex. It did then, and it's even more powerful now. So I could move in circles and ask questions innocently,
Yeah.
just to gain knowledge.
Yeah.
And
No.
listen, here's the other thing too, Eric.
Yeah.
Everybody's a sports fan. Everybody's a sport. So if you're not a jerk, you can get a conversation from people. You can learn something from people, because there are not a lot of people that don't have an interest in sport or have an interest in learning something about sport.
Especially influential people, right? I'm sure, right? Being in
Correct.
those rooms. Yeah.
Correct.
No, absolutely, definitely. And to kind of wrap up, Carl, I'm curious on a football question. I forgot what channel I was on the other day, and some analysts were talking about, some of the most underrated NFL players of all time, and they mentioned you, maybe playing next to Lawrence Taylor. I'm curious your thoughts on that, and do you feel like you're underrated? Do you feel like you get your just due? I'm curious how you just feel overall about it.
I know for a fact from an industry standpoint, I get my just due. The people I played against and the people that coached against me. I think from a recency biased perspective, people who have not seen me or have only seen me a little bit, they probably can find 5 people that they think are better than me,
Right.
but they aren't. So I get my just due, and a lot of people believe that that's one of the reasons why I am not in the Hall of Fame, is because of playing with Harry Carson and Lawrence Taylor. And that's a little bit of that probably is true, but I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it for the world, because, being a part of something special, one of the best defenses of all time, and not just along for the ride. I was driving sometimes too. So, and my teammates appreciated me. Like, if you ask Lawrence Taylor what I meant to that team, I think you'll have a better appreciation of the type of player I was and how good I was.
Yeah, you wouldn't trade the ring, right? For sure. Not at
No, I
all.
got 2 that I'm never trading, and I earned them. And in the first Super Bowl, I was the best player on the football field, outside of Phil Simms.
Right. No, absolutely. And that's a memorable one, right? And
Yes.
how do you like your Giants this coming season?
I think they're going to be okay. They're going to improve even more than they did last year. They have a really good coach, and the culture is so much better now.
Yeah, we'll be checking them out for sure.
For
Well,
sure.
Carl, we appreciate your time. There you have it, folks. The fashion executive, businessman, and former New York Giants star, Carl Banks. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.